and welcome to another episode of Photography Friday. I'm Jane Corley with Pic Visions, Media Arts and Photography. If it's your first time here, welcome! Make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell so you can be notified every time a new video is uploaded. In today's video, we're going to learn about the 14 mistakes that beginning photographers make and how to fix them. Let's get started. My first mistake is not using the histogram. Your histogram can be set in your display options inside of your camera and will show the quality of your image before you push the shutter button. The histogram will show you the shadows, midtones, and highlights and where they may or may not be blown out. Blown out means you have too many bright highlights or too many dark shadows. The midtones are, of course, located in the middle and will show a peak, meaning your midtones are being blown out. This also goes inversely if they're too low. If you do not see a shadow or a highlight mixer on either side of the histogram, that means that you need more shadows or need more highlights. Or you need to decrease your exposure, your shutter, and all that good stuff like we learned in our last video. If you must blow out a portion of your histogram, blow out minor shadows. You can always bring your shadows up, but it's harder to bring your highlights down in post-production. My second tip to becoming a better photographer and avoiding some average mistakes is to move. If you've seen my other videos, you know how big I am into moving around, gaining different perspective, point of view, all that good stuff when you're taking your photos. Don't be afraid to climb a tree, to lay in the dirt. Change your perspective and you will change the quality of your images. Along with this, you'll need to pay close attention to the way that you are cropping your images. If you have distracting elements within the frame of your shot, those images will ruin your photos. So if somebody happened to leave a set of keys, or their coffee cup, or any other distracting elements within the field of frame, remove those items, change those perspectives so that those items are not located in your frame. That also goes for elements that you can't change. If there's a phone pole in the back of your image that looks like it's growing out of your subject's head, move. Change your perspective and angles. There's a trash can in a street view you're using. Change your cropping so that that is no longer in your image. Remove distracting subject matter out of the frame of your image in order not to distract your viewer from your wonderful photograph. My third mistake to avoid is to have a tripod. A monopod will do just fine, but have some sort of stabilization device on hand every time you go out and shoot. Now, I know a lot of photographers think that this is very cumbersome. I can just use objects around in the area to use as a base. Bring a tripod, y'all. Bring a monopod. Whatever you have, bring a stabilization device. This will allow you to have a wider range of options when you're going to your session locations. If you need a longer exposure, you'll need to have a tripod. So if you always bring a tripod, whether you think you're going to need it or not, it's going to come in handy more often than it won't. So I believe when it comes to tripods, it's better to have it than not need it, and need it than not have it. My fourth mistake to avoid is to check the settings on your camera before you go out and shoot. Check your file format. Make sure it's what you want for your session. Check your image settings before you go out and shoot. High format, low format, RAW, JPEG, JPEG RAW, whatever you want your session images to be, confirm that that is what's going on inside of your camera before you go out and shoot. Make sure your camera is clean. This includes your lens, your camera body, any other equipment that you've used for previous shoots. Make sure to clean it before and after your shoot. You have to take care of your equipment, y'all. So confirm the settings in your camera and confirm that your camera is clean. My fifth mistake to avoid is don't be afraid of simplicity. Using this technique, be mindful that you need to make sure that even though your background is simple, that your subject matter is intriguing, creating a purpose to your image. My sixth tip is to not pose your subjects too hard. If you put your subject in unnatural contortionist posing, those poses, you will be able to tell that that subject is uncomfortable in the final print. If you pose your image subject in more of a simple form, something a little bit cleaner, and then have them change their facial expressions, showing happiness, joy, love, ambition, have them think about items that cause them pleasure or anger, and use the translated facial expressions to step up your posing technique. If you pose their body too hard, not showing the natural angles of the shoulders or the lift of the neck, those small adjustments can make a huge difference in your posing. Have your subject matter translate a change of pose within their facial expressions rather than changing and contorting their body in these unnatural poses. My seventh mistake to avoid is to not be afraid of post-production. You won't always get the perfect lighting and color. And with the availability of post-production techniques these days, why wouldn't you take advantage of it? Post-production is a real thing, y'all, and it's crazy to think that people don't use it more often than you think. Professionals to amateurs, we all use it, y'all. Post-production is a real thing. But don't go overboard. As we know, with great power comes great responsibility. So, do not go overboard. Do not take advantage of the post-production process. Don't take out those smile lines that grandmother worked so hard to earn. Don't change the contours of people's faces. I understand getting rid of, acne or any other, blemishes that might be on their face, but like scars, they may not want their scars removed. Those scars were earned. That's part of their story. So do not rob people of their identity by taking advantage of the post-production process. But on another side of it, the filters and the, cookie cutter processing of Instagram or, other in the phone techniques of changing your images with the saturation or this filter or that filter, just don't do it, y'all. Make your own path, make your own way, make your images stand out with different themes in post-production. Focus on exposure, saturation, color balance, and sharpness, first and foremost with post-production. The eyes and hair need to be sharp, and the shadows and highlights need to be seen and appreciated. My eighth mistake to avoid is to not be mindful of composition. Composition includes cropping, rule of thirds, even just placing your subject in the middle of the photograph. Just make sure the positioning of your subject matter has a purpose. So my eighth tip to avoid is to not be mindful of composition. My ninth mistake to avoid is if you are going and shooting a session at a location. Go and visit that location prior to your session time. That way, when you go, you won't be looking around like a lost kid at Disney World, not knowing where to shoot your subject. If you go visit these location spaces beforehand and really frame and pick out beautiful backdrops that really won't have other people in them, won't be having distractive subject matter, you can really make the most out of your shoot location by not wasting around time looking around to see where you need to go next. Have options with framing and other elements in the background of the photograph. I have 2 or 3 locations here in South Carolina that are my go-to spots for almost every shoot. If I need to throw out a shoot real quick and meet somebody over at this location, I have centrally located areas around town, depending on where my client may be from or where they live or what they've got going on that day. I've got locations peppered all over Columbia, South Carolina that I can say, oh, well, you're in this area, let's go to this spot, and I've got 10, 12, 15, 20 locations in that one local park that I can shoot one subject. If you find these gold mines of shoot locations, hold on to them. That way it will almost be like an extension of your studio space. My 10th tip, and this may be a little controversial, y'all, is do not let the gear that you have hold you back. If all you have is an old DSLR and maybe one lens and one battery and a small SD card and maybe a floor lamp, there's so much that you can do with minimal equipment these days, y'all. So do not let gear hold you back. Yes, it is nice to have 20, 30 lenses and 4 or 5 camera bodies and full lighting systems and all the equipment you could ever need. But do not make excuses that you cannot excel and exceed expectations with basic equipment. Get to know what all of your equipment does. Read your manuals. Read them. I know you don't want to, but read them. You need to know every single aspect of the way that your camera and lenses work. That way, you can manipulate all the different characteristics of your equipment to get that perfect shot, to really push the boundaries of your photography skills. My 11th mistake to avoid is to not shoot in RAW. If you shoot your images in RAW or RAW JPEG, you will have more abilities to make adjustments to your images in post-production. I'll have a whole video about what it is to shoot in RAW, but just as kind of a brief overview, if you shoot an image in JPEG, it provides a final image with a few adjustments that are made by your camera. It's almost like the auto section of file formats. It will make the corrections and adjustments to those highlights and midtones and shadows and bump up your colors a little bit more and just give you the clarity that the camera thinks that you need. When you shoot in RAW, you're going to get the raw image of what you shot. It's going to give you the exact settings you chose. It's going to show you the exact exposure settings that you desired when you took that photograph. It's going to be exactly like you wanted it to be. Now, if you shoot that image and you look at it on your view screen or you pull it up on your computer, it's going to look flat. And you may be saying, Jane, why? Why would I shoot RAW if my image is going to come out crappy? If you shoot in RAW, it is a different file format and will allow you to group your images together as one entity of file format so that you can make adjustments across the board of all of your images. RAW file format will give you more options and streamline the editing process, whereas JPEG will give you smaller file format, less to work with, and a more cumbersome post-production process. So avoid the mistake of not shooting in RAW. My 12th mistake to avoid is to get off all of the automatic settings on your camera. Stop letting your camera make the choices for you. This goes all the way from getting off automatic mode without flash, but also get off of autofocus. If you remain on autofocus, you will lose the ability to choose a focal point, and you may regret it when you get back home after your session that none of the things that I was trying to focus on in my photographs was what my camera actually was focusing on. Your mind and your eyes were playing tricks on you. So if you take yourself off automatic focus and really have to dial in to where your lens chooses to focus, you will avoid any and all surprises when you go to upload your card. My 13th step to avoid is not finding special moments in your photography. So if you're out there shooting, start thinking, how many people have taken this exact photo before? How many people have stood where I'm standing right now and taken this exact photograph? If you can pay attention to separating yourself from the standard, your photographs will be separated from the standard. So we've used the example of the Grand Canyon in a lot of our tutorials previously. We'll use it again. You're standing in front of the Grand Canyon, looking straight out onto all these beautiful colors and plateaus and all of this vegetation. That photograph has probably been taken 1,000+ times, if not 1,000,000+ times in the past. You are no different from any other photographer that stood exactly where you're standing. But if you shoot it 2 feet higher than the normal individual's eye level, or all the way on the ground shooting through the grass, that is a new photograph. That is an interesting photograph. That is something someone's going to want to look at and be intrigued by. So if you can create intriguing and interesting images, you will separate yourself from the average or basic photographer. Don't copy other people's work. Get inspired by their work. Try matching their technique and then taking it one step further in your own direction. Create your own unique tone of voice. And my final step, number 14, is to always be experimenting. Always push the boundaries of what you know. Always test new theories and new practices. Do your research. Look at other people's work and get inspired. Think about how you can take things one step further. Continue to test your eyes. Test the boundary of the world. Start looking for all of these qualities that people don't see. Find light in the darkness, color in the mundane. Give your subject a voice. Always be telling a story. So I hope this video was helpful on the 14 mistakes to avoid in basic photography. I'm Jane Corley with PicVisions, Media Arts and Photography. Make sure to leave in the comments below any tips and tricks you'd like to pass on to your fellow photographers. Also, any questions you may have after this video. Make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell so you can be notified every time a new video is uploaded every week. Until then, see you later, guys!